A declaration of war. That's how Saudi Arabia has described its relationship with Lebanon. The harsh words came after Saad Hariri stepped down as Lebanon's prime minister. His reasons for quitting? Alleged Iranian meddling through Hezbollah. But Hariri's televised resignation wasn't from Beirut, it was from the Saudi capital, Riyadh, leading to questions of whether Hariri was forced to step aside by the Saudi royal family to make way for a new confrontation with Iran. It's all led to fears of destabilization in Lebanon due to what some have called the Middle East's Cold War between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now Turkey hasn't taken a side, only saying it will stand by Lebanon to support its political unity and stability. And there may be good reason for that. Its ties with Iran are warming, but Ankara also has a strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia. Could a new flashpoint in Lebanon change Turkey's position? And to answer this and other questions, I'm joined in the studio by Mojtaba Barghdandan. He's an Iranian political and security analyst, and by Jamal Abdullah. He's a senior researcher at TRT World's Research Center. Let's begin with you, Mojtaba. Yes. Is a new proxy war, or is Lebanon a new battleground for a proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
The recent developments that shake the region and also it seems that it has started with Hariri's resignation, but I think it has a long stories, at least for 1-2 months after Trump's come to power. Going to the proxy war in the Lebanon as a new battlefield, I think proxy war in Syria and in Lebanon in particular is not a new issue. So we are waiting for the escalation of the crisis. But if you want to know about if it would be the start of a Cold War, my answer is no, because the Cold War actually between Iran and Saudi Arabia has been started in 2006 with the Sheikh Nimar and Nimal's execution, and then came other issues.
Mojtaba is saying we have to wait and see. This is an ongoing process. It's nothing new. But how significant is it that Saad Hariri announces his resignation in Riyadh, Jamal?
Well, actually, I would like to say that indeed it is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran in Lebanon as well. But first of all, to understand what's happening in the region at all, not just in Lebanon, even in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, we have to understand what's happening now in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, since January 2015, a new king came to the power, King Salman. And with coming of King Salman to the power, a new generation, third generation in Saudi Arabia came to the power as well. I mean here, the two Muhammads, Muhammad bin Naif and Muhammad bin Salman. Now, we can notice that the foreign policy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the moment, or at the moment, it's kind of confrontation actually. Started by Yemen, just 3 months after King Salman came to the power, they launched the war in Yemen, as well as they supported actually some opposition in Syria, in Iraq against Iran. And now, what happened last weekend when Saad al-Hariri decided to announce that he will leave his position as prime minister in Lebanon from Riyadh rather than Beirut, that means Saudi Arabia is an actor, very active actor in the region. So what I'm afraid that the proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia in many countries in the region becomes actually a real war and direct war.
Jamal, the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif just tweeted this recently, a few days ago, and he says the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is engaged in wars of aggression, regional bullying, destabilizing behavior, and risky provocations. It blames Iran for the consequences. Going on what Mojtaba was saying, is Saudi Arabia to blame for all of this?
Well, first of all, allow me just to come back to your first question regarding Mr. Saad al-Hariri. Maybe I should mention here that Mr. al-Hariri is Saudi citizen, and we know that last weekend, 3-4 days ago, the leaders of Saudi Arabia arrested a lot of princes, ministers, foreign ministers, and even businessmen. And as we know, Mr. Saad al-Hariri and his father, Rafiq al-Hariri, who passed away actually in 2004, they are businessmen and they have a big company of construction in Riyadh called OJ. And maybe Mr. al-Hariri was being put under pressure actually to present his resignation from Riyadh. This is first point. Second point, coming back to your question, well, I believe that as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia now try to take the leadership in the region, in all the region, the Arab world and Muslim world as well. And to do so, Mohammed bin Salman, the real and actual leader in Saudi Arabia or governor of Saudi Arabia, he thinks that with taking place of to interfere in some countries or to open some front, even within the GCC, like as what's happened like last June with Qatar, to create this kind of crisis. So, well, I believe that Saudi Arabia now play a very significant role in the region, and it could be very dangerous for all the region. Well, let me conclude by Saudi Arabia is not really ready to take any kind of negotiation or dialogue with Iran for the moment.
Hold that thought, but we're all agreeing that Saudi Arabia has had some role to play, but what about Iran? It has backed Hezbollah, it has backed the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad. So when you talk about a proxy war or proxies being employed, Iran also is complicit in this process, isn't it?
See, let me talk in this way. We need more time to talk about this because it's a very hot issue. But in a very short, Hariri's resignation, as my colleague said, is not exactly pressure. Yeah, it is pressure from inside Saudi Arabia, but Hariri went back to Saudi Arabia with the empty hand after talking with Velayati, Dr. Velayati, because it happened 24 hours after he met with Dr. Velayati. So the message he sent to with his back to Saudi Arabia was not satisfied. He did not satisfy the Saudis. So it is one of all the series of events as a change, starting in October from White House to Israel to Lebanon.
Just to tell our viewers where everyone stands on this, the U.S. has supported Saad Hariri's decision and backed Saudi Arabia in Lebanon. The Israelis and Channel 10 News, a credible news service in Israel, published, one of its reporters tweeted that a cable sent to Israeli diplomats asking to lobby for Saudi Hariri and against Hezbollah. Are we looking, we have been witnessing ever since the Qatar crisis, a shift in alliances and allegiances. Are we looking at a new sort of alliance emerge where Turkey, Iran could find themselves on one side as opposed to Saudi Arabia, US and Israel on the other? Jamal.
Well, you mentioned here that, and you are right, that Saudi Arabia, United States of America, as well as Israel actually, consider all these three countries, consider Iran as the main enemy and not anything else actually. So now, regarding the new order in the region, I believe since the crisis in the Gulf, since June 5th this year, a new alliance is building now actually. Yes, I totally believe with my colleague as well that the conflict is not Sunni Shi'i. It's conflict. It's not ideological conflict. It's political conflict. That's why we found that Turkey, Iran, and Qatar, as line or as axis, try to build this kind of alliances. We can mention here and notice that Turkey and Qatar are Sunni countries. Iran is present the Shia Muslim in the world. So is it true? And the second thing I would like to mention here, that Mohammed bin Salman, who is the real ruler in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has his legitimacy from two factors or two resources. The first one, interior, coming from his father, King Salman, and the second one, exterior, and coming from Donald Trump administration. But the question we have to raise here, that we know that in the United States of America, The duration of the mandate of president is 4 years. So that means Mr. Trump will stay until 2020, November 2020. So Mr. Mohammed Salman would like to know all things before 2020 because no one sure that Mr. Trump will have the second mandate.
Jamal Abdullah, Mojtaba Barghdandan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.